You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1603 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday here in December, and it's part 2 of 2 with myself and Glen Willis of ATL on 29. So if you missed part 1, check it out in your same podcast feed right now. It should be available for you. And also, today's show is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, get $150 in bonus bets. Any $25 moneyline bet, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Also want to tell you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make us your first listen here at Locked On Hawks each and every day. Check us out on anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube on the video side, etc. And with no further delay, here's part 2 with myself and Glenn. Yeah, I want to get to this too because you actually brought it up to me, and it's been on my radar, but not necessarily. You and I don't always talk about transactions because that's not like what we get together and talk about most of the time. But it's a good time to talk about it in some respects because there are some teams around the league that are selling, for instance. Like Chicago's about to have a fire sale. That's one that's been, I get questions about that almost every day. Like, can we get Caruso? I'm like, probably not. But Javon Carter, maybe. Like, that kind of thing. We don't have to get into players, but even today, people were kind of talking about, Tyler talked about this with me online, like, can they make a move? And some of it's in response to Jalen, but some of it's more big picture, like you said. Organizational decision about, like, what do you want to be right now? How in are you? Patty Mills is like kind of on their roster right now as a locker room presence / trade exception, like walking trade exception. That's not a shot at Patty. It's just kind of what's going to happen. I think if they make a deal, Patty's salary is probably going to be in the deal. So they have that. They have a glaring hole with Jalen, but even with Jalen out there, which we talked about before, they have needs. And look, trades are hard, man. It's always harder than people want to make it seem to make a trade. It just is. But the first question is the question you asked previously is, where are they organizationally on this? And we've talked about Quinn. It's kind of been misinterpreted in some respects when I say this, but like, he doesn't necessarily coach the way that Nate did as far as like, tonight is all that matters in my life. Like, Quinn is kind of coaching big picture. And that's not necessarily, they're trying to win, but he's also trying to install his principles and like get guys developed and get guys to the next step. And I don't know what this season is. It's interesting but right now they're 9-10. We're having this conversation. Basically, a quarter of the season is over for the most part. That's a round number, but that's what it is. And they're 9-10, and I think they're probably better than that. And so do they. But like, if let's just say you fast forward the next 19 games, if they're 18-20 after the first 38, or if they're 20-20 after 40. Decisions have to be made. Like, you have to figure out what do you want to throw? The old phrase is good money after bad. I don't mean it that way, but like, do you want to press on this season in particular in the short term when you're in line for the 8 seed or the 9 seed? Or do you want to take a step back and maybe not press the gas pedal, save some of your assets that you already have a limited stockpile on, and maybe do that? So like, it's very early. Early December isn't necessarily the time that these kind of deals happen. That's what I've been trying to stress to people. Like, yeah, it'd be great to have someone right now to help them, but then how many teams make role player addition trades on December 3rd? It doesn't really happen. Like, the deals that happen this early are like when James Harden demands out, or when Zach LaVine is like shutting it down in Chicago. He might get traded this week. It wouldn't surprise me. But like, are they going to trade Alex Caruso on December 3rd? I don't think so, if I had to guess. So anyway, I'm saying a lot of things there, but it really is interesting organizationally. And yeah, they could really use some help on the perimeter, but I don't know what that looks like. Is it just Patty and a couple of picks? Sure, go ahead and do that if you want to. But if it's a bigger investment, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Hawks are, I mean, I know I'm pretty sure they acquired this, but the Hawks are not in a position to lead the market with the best offer for any of those level players. They're not.
No, they don't have the assets. I mean, I won't do the whole thing, but Caruso is a good example. That's why I said that. Caruso,
right.
Like, there is almost no chance the Hawks are going to have the best offer for Alex Caruso. I won't say there's 0% chance, but I don't see that as a likely option. Not that he wouldn't help them, because he would. He'd be really very useful on this team. But like, if you're a contending level team, you're probably going to want to invest more than the Hawks are right now on that spot. And from a capital perspective, yeah, the Hawks are not like bereft of picks. I don't want to frame it like they have no picks. It's not like they're like all in, but they are negative on their future picks right now, and that you have to keep that in mind too.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you're talking about a multi-team trade. If they can somehow make that happen, somebody has to have Clint, or something along those lines, right?
Oh yeah.
Then maybe they can kind of swing it, but they're not right now in a position to kind of make the best offer for a guy, say a Caruso or above, right? Kind of draw the line there. But that doesn't mean that they can't do something that's helpful, right?
Yep.
My view is where the Hawks sit today, when other organizations are at that point, they do their best work when they're opportunistic, right? A couple of examples, like last year, like when the Grizzlies were able to get Luke Kennard away from the Clippers on opportunity, that was a very smart move, right?
Yeah.
When the Grizzlies were able to take advantage of the Drew Holiday situation and get Marcus Smart away from the Grizzlies, from the Celtics, that was a smart move. And so I think when Hawks fans that are largely like every other fan base, I'm not picking on Hawks fans at all. Hawks fans, I interact with you on Twitter. I love you all. I love you. Right. But the idea that they can just call someone and make an offer that the other team can't refuse is not grounded in reality. That's not how this is going to go, right?
Especially not in November or December. That's just not the way that happens. Yeah.
Now, some more Siakam news surfaced this past week. I knew you were dying for that to happen, Brad.
I had to do a segment on that. I know. For the 17th time.
Podcast, Brad.
With no more information whatsoever. It was like, hey, I'm going to say the things that I said 6 months ago again. It's going to be fun.
Right. Now, Siakam, opportunistic. Is the price dropping significantly? That might be an opportunity to do something that could be impactful, right, for the Hawks, right? It doesn't solve everything, but the dude can play defense, right, in the right role and in the right defensive template. He can really be an impactful defender. Jevon Carter. Someone might go, oh, that doesn't really excite me. I'm sorry, but DeJounte would sign up for that. So DeJounte doesn't have to have all this defensive workload. DeJounte would drive all the way to Chicago, drive him all the way back. DeJounte would love that. And if you want DeJounte to sustain what he's been doing on offense, that kind of addition is exactly what can make a big difference in the big picture. Quinn, big picture guy, he's trying to instill habits, principles, instincts, have a team that's reflexively doing the things that he wants to do. And those are the kinds of things that add up. So I think whenever something happens, if something's going to happen, it's being that team that can be opportunistic around that, right? And it is, how do I help Trey? It is, how do I help DeJounte? It is, how do I have guys who can play at the 3 or the 4 that if one game I only need them to play 12 minutes because other team's not really presenting as much at the point of attack as some team. Another team throws Kawhi and James Harden at you and you need 5 guys that can, take their turns doing that, right? Having that kind of capability. And the Hawks aren't going to get to 5 this year. It'd be nice if they got 2, right? 3 would be a dream, and that sort of thing. But I really think, I believe that their best work would be done being opportunistic. Oh, Chicago is going to start dealing. What might kind of become available to us that we could pounce on opportunistically? The Siakam price dropping, or Siakam's going to get moved somewhere else, and that team has to move some salary, or something like that, and the Hawks can kind of pounce on that secondary move that's there. That's the work that's out there that you can do if you are, keeping your ear to the ground, understanding, what's developing around the league, which I have to think every front office puts a ton of energy into that, including the Hawks.
For sure.
But it's that opportunistic move that I'm thinking is the best chance for them to acquire something that's going to move them more towards the kind of roster rotation that Quinn needs for his system to work.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the NBA and NFL offers stay hot at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet right now. That's $150 in your pocket if your team wins. Beyond the awesome perks of signing up with FanDuel, they have everything you're looking for across the sports betting space. They have point spreads, they have over-unders, money lines, and player props. future bets. They have live in-game betting as well as same-game parlays and much more. And the FanDuel app is safe and it's secure. They cover the entire range of sports, and the user interface and experience is fantastic. They have the NFL, they have college football, they have the NBA, WNBA, college basketball, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and many more, and all kinds of options of the Hawks as well. Pre-game lines, in-game lines, future bets with regard to the Hawks, both on the player side and on the team side. And now is the best possible time to sign up with folks at FanDuel. This is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Check out the official sport partner of the Locked On Podcast Network with an offer that you will absolutely not want to miss. One more time, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. The Hawks did do this on a very small scale over the summer, where they just kind of hopped in and took advantage of that Houston situation, where they basically got free draft picks for taking on two guys that they later moved for nothing. Yep. It was Ty, the Washington Garuba trade, which again, very low profile example, but that there was no downside to that move at all. And they kind of just swooped in and stole a couple of guys and a couple of second round picks that don't mean a ton, but it was a low level move, but it's a good example of an opportunity that like just popped up out of nowhere because Houston thought they were going to sign Brook Lopez. That was the whole thing. They didn't get Brook Lopez. That was the only reason why that deal happened, which is funny, but that's why it happened. It may not be exactly that linear, but that's right. A good example of that. And Javon, my favorite is, of course, Javon Carter. Was why I brought him up before, because I always get asked about Caruso, and I always pivot people to Javon Carter because it's much more realistic.
Yeah. And there's another name, too, that might surprise folks. Could be a low-cost get. Dennis Smith Jr. Has become a very good defender. Yeah. Very good defender. And could be like a second-round pick kind of guy, right?
Oh, and it would cost very little. Yeah.
Right. Dennis Smith Jr. would save DeJounte a reasonable amount of defensive wear and tear, right? And even help just Trey, some too. But that's a guy you can put on the floor 18 minutes a game, whatever number you want to pick, and can defend on the ball every defensive possession if you want him to. It's weird. Former number 1 overall pick. Has actually bought into the fact that his career is going to be made on defense. There are guys like that around the league on teams that aren't going to do a lot this year that you could potentially kind of make that work. Now, some people will say in the division is hard. No, I don't think it is harder, right?
Not really.
But there are other guys. But that's another guy. He's not quite at the Javon level, but he is an upgrade on what they have right now.
And the thing about Carter is that he can also shoot. Like he's not a ball handler, but he can shoot. Like it's kind of he'd be in the Aaron Holiday mold of last year, except for much bigger and better as a defender as a result. Like Aaron did a good job with that, but Aaron's also 5'11" or whatever he is, whereas Javon Carter is legitimately 6'3", 6'4", and can defend wings in a way that Aaron couldn't. I also have to say two words, one name, and that is of course DeLon Wright. I'm contractually obligated to throw out the fact that DeLon should be healthy in a couple weeks, probably available for nothing, I would guess. Just saying.
Landry Shamet is not the defender.
You are the world's leading Landry Shamet stan, Glenn. I've realized this about you over the years. You love Landry Shamet
because he's a professional. He is a bona fide professional, and he's more of a help defender. He's not a point of attack guy. But he's going to do better than Bay behind the play with 3 of them.
Yeah, he'd be better than Bogey and Bay at the secondary stuff.
And he can shoot, which is great too. Yeah.
This is not on purpose. I'm doing this transition. But it was on my list to ask you about AJ Griffin. So I'm not trying to trade AJ. Let me be very clear about that. I'm not trying to trade AJ. But I get a lot of questions about this, and I've answered it. But since I have you here, it's a secondary topic because he's not playing right now. But you have a first-round pick from less than a year and a half ago that had this really, really encouraging rookie season where he was like off the charts efficient for a rookie. Was a top 10 rookie in the league basically last season conservatively. And he's either not playing right now, which has happened. He's actually only played 6 of the last 14 games. He's sat the last 2, which if you told me Jalen was going to be out and he wasn't going to play 2 games in a row, I would have been surprised. And that's where we are right now with AJ Griffin. And I'll say the numbers, but like he's just not been good when he's played this year. Offensively either. I mean, offensively he's been shooting very poorly. I don't worry about that, but it's happened. And then defensively, I don't know about you, and I'll ask you this question now, I guess. Anytime I get asked about why AJ is not playing, I have to guess, because Quinn's not going to tell me, but my educated guess is that Quinn does not believe in AJ's defense at this moment. That's a very simple response, and it's not satisfying. I'm not saying that's my choice, but I'm 90% sure with True Serum, if you asked Quinn and the staff what they're worried about with AJ, it isn't the offense. it's the other side of the floor. So what do you make of that? What do you make of him not playing? And I think also big picture, are you worried to the point where, like, you know, people, I'm not saying this is mainstream, but a lot of Hawks fans are like, okay, if this guy's not playing, hey, why didn't we trade him for Siakam has been out there? And also, why don't we trade him now if he's not playing? And I don't subscribe to that, but it's not an unreasonable set of questions. So I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, not an unreasonable set of questions, but I mean, to kind of go broader, and I'm not saying this is the consensus, but giving away Clint Capella is not the answer to improving the roster.
It is, right? Absolutely. Just cut Clint today. Send Clint to Shanghai, and that'll be that'll fix everything. It's fine.
So I think I think it's obvious from what we see that the issues with AJ is on defense, right? And the change and what he would need to be able to do from last year is massive, right?
They're playing a different way, folks.
Last year, a lot of times it was other team second units on the floor. He's on whoever's in the weak side corner. He just has to be low man and manage that timing between, either zoning the weak side or navigating the space between his man in the corner and tagging the roller or whatever. It's like 3 or 4 things you have to do kind of in that role. Now you do them well, right? But that is something he could reasonably handle. Now you might end up right in front of the rim, 25 feet from your man, right? And have to read the play and detect what's the most optimal pass that the ball handler operating in high pick and roll can make, and how do you navigate that space? That is a whole different, like, we see Bay fail at that over and over, like every night, right? And Bay
Bay's a fourth year guy who went to college for multiple seasons
and played at Villanova.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
No, and AJ played a good program in Duke, but it's not the same thing. Sure. And he's also really young. And I don't mean to derail you, but I am not the X's and O's expert that you are. But the way I described this to somebody the other day was like, what the Hawks are doing defensively now. The simple version is it's a lot more complicated and a lot more nuanced and a lot more multi-step than what they were doing under Nate, especially for someone like AJ. They were able to kind of hide AJ, not intentionally hide, but you know what I mean. Like, he was obviously going to be down the pecking order of their important defenders last year when he was on the court. When Trey wasn't out there, they were able to kind of make AJ like the guy they were trying to hide the most. Yep. And yeah, this year their scheme doesn't really allow for that as much. Like, you kind of have to have him out there and again, it'd be different maybe if he was just lighting it up on offense. I think that's maybe part of it is that if you're the staff, you're giving me short bursts, he's not performing. And look, I'll defend AJ now. It's really hard for anybody, much less a guy who's 20 years old, to have a very, very short leash. And it seems like he has a very short leash right now. It does seem like that way. I mean, even when he's played a handful of these games, he'll play 1 stint or he'll play a 3-minute stint. And it's like, I get why. Trust me, I understand why. But, like, it's a very precarious situation. So maybe it's, I don't want to speculate too much, but maybe his confidence is a little bit lower than it was before. Like, he's not played well, and that can compound. If you're not playing well, you're not doing what they want you to do. Defensively, it's a little bit overwhelming, and then you're also missing your shots. Like, it can kind of spiral a little bit. AJ, by all accounts, is a really upbeat kid. Like, he's a positive guy, but like, it feels like he's playing a little bit, I don't want to say timid, but he's never been that fastest processor anyway. So maybe it's like even a half step slower than that. Like, he's kind of just thinking, I can't mess this up right now. Does that seem reasonable? I don't know.
It does. Even like on offense, like, he's kind of seems like he's most comfortable kind of in third gear. And by that, I don't mean playing hard, but like when he's running the pick and roll, he wants to kind of navigate down and kind of get to that floater.
He's not a fast zip around. He never has been that kind of guy. I mean, he's always been very, very methodical especially for a young guy. It's actually kind of it's kind of a good thing. In some ways, especially for a guy, he's a very level head. He's a very level, even guy. He doesn't really get sped up a lot, but it can look like you're just going half speed when he doesn't have things going well for him. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, and PrizePicks is the largest DFS platform in North America and also the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And at PrizePicks, you pick 2 to 6 players and then choose whether they're actually going to have more or less than their projection in a ton of different categories. What if 25 times the money on your entries? And you can have combo projections as well that allow you to include 2 or more players from different sports or different leagues across the board. They have awesome selection of sports and stat types at PrizePicks, and some of those places are not offered anywhere else. They have projections on the NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, PGA, and many more. And they also have a reboot policy. PrizePicks is the only DFS platform with an injury insurance policy. I've really enjoyed checking out PrizePicks stuff all year long. I'm really dating back for the last couple of years. I'm digging it all the time on the NBA side, NFL side. Bowl season's coming up as well. All that's going to be there for you at PrizePicks. And on the whole, the experience is fantastic at PrizePicks. It's fun, and I recommend it at the highest level. And the place to go is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use promo code LockedOnNBA for a first-time deposit match up to $100. One more time, that is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use promo code LockedOnNBA when you get there. Check it out now with daily fantasy sports made easy with PrizePicks.
I mean, I don't know AJ, but I put a lot into what I see kind of at the human level when I watch players play, right? And some of that comes from coaching and stuff like that. But I think you and I maybe talked about this before on the show after Summer League. Like, I remember the second possession they played against the Kings, their first Summer League game. AJ's bringing the ball up, and he has a chance, and he's not being told what play to call.
Yeah.
And he's on the floor with Kobe, and Kobe looks at him, and AJ goes 1 out, which means we're going to run the play for you, Kobe. And in that moment, I was like, AJ, run the play for yourself. Like, dude, be assertive, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're better than everybody else on the floor, like conceptually, and things like that. And so he has this, which I'm sure, like, if I knew him personally, would be like this kind of beautiful kind of characteristic where he wants to be supportive. He wants to
definitely,
be supplemental. He wants to kind of fit into a role and not have to be the guy and be braggadocious and be, or whatever, right? But his skill set, I think, calls for, him to find a way to kind of lean into being a little bit more assertive. It's a different variation of kind of what Hunter has, where Hunter doesn't want to be this like guy who's like, look at me and, going and dominating a game, and things like that. And I mean, Hunter's been playing really, really well. He's been picking his spots to be assertive, going to the rim, getting to the free throw line, right? And that's maybe a little bit of a longer term kind of template for AJ. And so I think fans sometimes fail to understand that sometimes it's about raw ability, sometimes it's about getting the human being to have a willingness to work beyond their comfort zone and do some things that align with their skill set, but may not align with their instinct of who they are as a person. And all that has to come together. And AJ's, 20, right? And so from that vantage point, I think that the responsibilities are like 2x, 3x on defense, what they were last year for a guy who plays on the wing, right? And I just think he needs some time. He doesn't look confident when he's on the floor right now, to me, at all, right? I don't know. There's a little bit of parallel of like when the Hawks traded for Tim Hardaway Jr., then like, sent him to the gulag or wherever they sent him for like 4 months, right?
That was the all-time pregame press conference of my time covering the Hawks. Was the season opener, and it was literally, not to derail the podcast, but I was the nerd, and I still am the nerd, just for everybody knows. I'm the biggest nerd in the press corps, other than maybe Kevin. Kevin and I kind of battle for nerd status, I guess. But I asked Bud pregame of that season opener, just offhand, who the inactives were going to be, which is a question that no one would ask. Like only I would ask that, or Kevin, or like some nerd. And Bud just straight answered, it said Tim Hardaway Jr. And I kind of looked at him like, is he hurt? No. Okay. They just traded a first-round pick for him, like 3 months before. And I know you know that, Glenn, but for the listeners, like they just traded a first-round pick for a guy, presumably to make them better right away because they were in win now mode at that point in time. And then that guy was inactive for DNP CD. His first game. So that's the parallel Glenn was. I know we have some new. There's lots of Hawks fans that are new in the Trey era that would not remember that. So I'm just want to make sure I get some clarity.
But it reminds me of that and those who've been around a while, right? And I think that this is a multi-month process to kind of get him to kind of understand all of that. Kevin and I talked on our podcast about Kevin led that conversation, so I want to give him credit for it. Like, should AJ spend some time in College Park, right? And I think we landed on it wouldn't hurt, and might be a good idea, So I think I still believe in AJ. All the things that I said when you and I did his player capsule back in what was that, June or July, or whatever it was, right? I still believe in him. I think he's an exceptional shooter. I think he's exceptional, kind of navigating pick and roll with patience. I think he sees the floor. I just think it's a matter of kind of getting his kind of human instincts and then his skill development to kind of line up and get together. And I just think, and part of me, I mean, to not be, I know some people are just like, if you're not going to play, just trade him for somebody who can help you right now. That's not like automatically the best thing to do, right? To me, the fact that they're loading him up with this development plan tells me they believe he can get there. I think there's a positive angle to that, where if it was like a guy who just can't do it, the extreme example of that is a similar era a little bit is Adrian Payne was never right. And so I think if they felt like AJ couldn't get there, they wouldn't be putting him through this development process to kind of get him there. But it hurts to not have him to be able to kind of do some of the things that he did last year right now. But the bigger picture, again, Quinn's prioritizing as best we could tell. The bigger picture is to get him ready to do all the things that the person who's going to play it the way he needs to do. Not there yet.
Yeah, and we'll get away from this, but I think part of it too is that his weaknesses on defense, we talked about that at the beginning of this conversation, they're kind of triaging the defense right now, and AJ's not going to help with that. And if you're Quinn, like as much as it's not all about that night, they are trying to win that game, and Quinn kind of knows right now that AJ's not going to help them on defense. Like he might help them on offense, but they don't really. That's not really where they need the help. And I do understand that it looks and seems very weird for Garrison Matthews to play over AJ Griffin in a vacuum. I understand that, and I'm not saying Hawk fans shouldn't feel whatever way they feel about that. I think you and I both kind of value what Garrison can bring as far as like he's a solid role player, but it does look weird. The same position, I get all that. And yeah, the G League thing is interesting. Like, if you assume he's not going to play, I'm more open to him going to the G League. I don't think that going to him, especially for AJ, that going to the G League is like some panacea. I don't think that's going to like, because we saw in summer league, like he's not necessarily the most comfortable doing like on balls, like being the guy or whatever.
Yep.
But I think given the fact that Atlanta runs their same stuff on defense in College Park that they do in Atlanta, just playing would maybe help him. I've kind of come full circle. I was kind of anti-G League early in the year, but now that he's not playing, we're getting deeper into the season, I think he needs to play. That's the biggest thing. Like that's where I was with Jalen 2 years ago. Like I was like, Jalen's got to go to College Park. If he's not going to play, he needs to play. He needs to play in College Park. It's just like it's one or the other.
And it's a little easier to do when they're at home. So it's harder to
the shuttle.
Right. Yeah. So maybe he'll. I haven't looked at College Park schedule.
That's probably what I do. Honestly, that's probably what I would do. Is like, if I was the Hawks, not necessarily just send him to College Park for 2 weeks, but like plan for a game or two to get him down there and play.
Yep.
He just needs to get in a game and play. Anyway, we've gone long as always. Before I let you go, we have a few minutes left. We talked around it, but they're 9-10 right now. Big picture, what's changed for you as far as like how good they are? Because preseason we were both pretty optimistic. We weren't calling them like top 3 seeds in the East or anything like that, but we were feeling decent about the team. I still kind of do. If they had Jalen, Jalen would be here. If you took Jalen away, my prognosis would be a little bit more grim, I have to say.
For sure.
But how much, if at all, have you sort of lowered your expectations for the season now that we're basically at the first quarter mark?
Yeah, I mean, so I've said on record that I think they're top 6, in the East, which is not some crazy statement. I mean, 7th is play-in, right? So it's not like it's like I have them just out of the play-in or whatever. I think the longer that they go play with this much problematic defense, they're creating more and more uphill to get to top 6, and so I think I think I have to say my level of confidence that they're going to be top 6 is right now tied to what kind of defensive solution, or I would say quasi-defensive solution can they come up with quickly, right? Yeah. Maybe this coming week, the off days are going to help them kind of, develop something a little bit more fundamentally different, and stuff like that. So like I said a few minutes ago, they're not on the trajectory to finish top 6 right now. That's not where they are. That's not where they're playing. Right now, they're playing like a team that's going to compete to hopefully be 7 or 8 in the play-in and not 9-10 in the play-in, right? But the other part is like how good is the field in the Eastern Conference? Like Orlando's gotten to a level way earlier than I thought.
Orlando is 14-6, which is not what I had on my. I mean, look, and that's a whole other podcast, but that is a surprising outcome for sure.
It is, and I love what Jamal Mosley's doing down there. I love what I see in him as a coach.
Their defense rocks, by the way. That's for me and you. Their defense rocks. Those defense is so much fun. They're really good.
I know. And Jalen Suggs is becoming one of the best defenders in the league this soon. Is impressive. Miami is sustaining what they lost. The players that they lost a little bit better than I thought that they would. New York is kind of what they were last year, which is good enough to be fifth-ish in the East if they kind of keep doing well. And then Toronto's playing, and so a lot of it is how well is the field doing. But the thing the Hawks can control is what they are doing, what they aren't doing. And right now, I think if they continue to be top 5 in offense and bottom, 6, 7 in defense, they're going to be in the play-in.
That's where they. By the way, sounds familiar to me.
I know.
About you.
But I trust this coaching staff, right? And I trust the organization. The thing I appreciate about the organization from the time that they kind of reshuffled the front office or what have you is no panic moves, none, right?
Yep.
They found a really, really good coach, right? Didn't let Quinn get to the market in the offseason, right? Kind of secured that. Mm-hmm. So they've been patient, and it's hard sometimes for fans to buy into patience, right?
Yes.
But that's where they need to be. So if they stay at this place they are for a while, don't make a bad move, keep working on it, and then end up 7th or 8th, I don't think that's a failure. It's not where anyone wants to finish the season. No one wants to finish the season there, right? But right now they're not playing like a top 16. Right now they have a huge set of defensive issues to fix to kind of get back on track to be going back there. Thankfully, the middle of the pack in the East is still all within 2 to 3 games of each other. So, but they need to win the games that they should win. Right now, I think there's two objectives: win the games you should win. Don't require 48 minutes of rotation players.
That's
to do
a big
it.
thing. Yeah, I mean, winning the games. They've actually done a pretty good job with that. They actually haven't had any any awful glaring losses. But to your point, it's taken them a lot of effort to beat San Antonio, for instance. That game should not have been that close, and it was.
Right.
So.
Right, and then the other thing is a defensive solution without Jalen. Right.
Yes.
The faster that they can kind of get on track for winning the games they should win, with less effort, and then moving the needle even a little bit on defense week by week by week, that gets them kind of back to where I would see them as being a team that can get to 6, by the end of the season, 5 if something crazy happens above them. So I'm concerned about them losing a number of games, staying where they are. But I also am just interested to see how aggressively they tackle their current defensive issues, and we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, and it's still early. I mean, it is basically the 1 quarter mark as I'm recording this. It's one more game would be actually technically it, but this is a 3-day break, Glenn. You have to work around the calendar a little bit with content. It's this very round thing, 3-day break. We're calling it the 1 quarter mark here, but yeah, I mean, I think they can still get to the top 6. I think that is in play. Yep. I think you do have to ding them. Maybe it's a half step or whatever. How do you want to say that? Given that they've banked 10 losses. And given that Jalen's going to be out for a couple more weeks, I mean, that's the reality. There's not a lot of, and yeah, they could still add to the team, but that was always an option anyway coming into the year. So, couple of interesting games coming up, and we don't have to go full preview mode on this, but I think Brooklyn at home on Wednesday is a game that they, it's not a slam dunk game. They're not playing a terrible team, but that's a game that you need to win. 3 days off, you're playing a home game against a comparable opponent. That's one you kind of need to win. I'm not going to come in here and scream and yell if they lose. But that's a game that you're going to be favored in, I'd imagine, with the folks in Las Vegas at FanDuel and all that stuff. But that's one to circle. We'll see. And then especially because you have to go to Philly on Friday, they got no favors done with that scheduling. By the way, having added a road really game to Philly. Yeah, that's a tough one. So anyway, we'll have more on that later in the week. Glenn, thank you for being here. As always, I appreciate the time. We could, again, do another hour pretty easily, I'm sure, but we'll cut it off here because I have to. Anything else that you'd like to share or plug? I know we talked about ATL on 29, ATL on 29, I should say, a great podcast you and Kevin do, but plug away, my friend, while we're here.
Yeah, ATL on 29. You can find me on Twitter at Willis_Glenn. I have to profess that my frequency of breaking down game film is a little slow right now. The day job is intense for a few more weeks. So just I don't have the extra time right now, but I will get back to that in the next week or two to doing a good breakdown. So, but still, I'd love to talk, live tweet, I have conversations and stuff like that. And, so there's some, nice kind of Twitter spaces that some of the guys, some Hawks fans will kind of spin up now. I'll try to, if it's a weekend, I might try to jump into one of those now and then. So yeah, ATL 29, our good friend Kevin, enjoy that. And then find me on Twitter, and that's where you can interact with me.
I recommend that. I listen to every episode of the ATL 29 podcast. It's a great show. You can listen to both of us. It's certainly allowed. Don't tell Kevin I said nice things about him, but I think Kevin is very good at his job and a very smart person about basketball and life.
Yeah.
Glenn, thank you again for being here. I will I try to give you a little bit of time in between podcast appearances because you have other things going on, but it's always fun to talk to you, so I appreciate it. As for everybody else, please subscribe to the podcast. I don't know if I'll have another episode between now and the game on Wednesday, but at the very least, I'll be back after the game on Wednesday. I have some travel coming up this week, etc. But stay tuned, subscribe to the podcast, check out Glenn's work across the board, and we'll see you all next time.